55-year-old Pamela Shonin, a retired Las Vegas police officer, murdered her son-in-law after he attempted to visit his estranged wife and son on April the 22nd of 2019. Shonin, who asked the court to address her as Pamela Renee Bordeaux, shot 23-year-old Sean Babbitt 10 times in the head and the torso. The young man had been visiting his estranged wife and their young child in a supervised setting. They'd already left the room when Shonin confronted him. The autopsy revealed that Babbitt had attempted to cover himself during the attack, resulting in several of his fingers being blown off. Allegedly, the former officer had been triggered by her son-in-law's intention to request an increase in his weekly visitation time with his son. No further information has been released to the media regarding the case as of December of 2022. Number 9. Kevin Canty. Retired New York policeman Kevin Canty murdered his wife, Jessica, on April the 19th of 2014 in a fit of jealousy. 44-year-old Canty, who'd left the force due to disability, had reportedly known the victim since high school. Believing she'd been unfaithful to him, he fired 10 shots at her with a 9mm pistol in front of 2 of their children, aiming for her stomach, breasts, and arm. A neighbor called 911 after the children ran from the family house, screaming that their father had killed their mother. Shortly after the murder, Canty turned himself into the police, telling the arresting officer he was sorry but calling his wife a whore for cheating on him. Neighbors interviewed by detectives described the shooter as a violent man who often fought with his wife. Canty pleaded guilty to manslaughter on November the 17th of 2015 and was consequently sentenced to 25 years in prison. Number 8. Brenton M. Hodge. Retired police officer Brenton M. Hodge used his old badge to try to get out of a DUI in Flagler County, Florida, on May the 5th of 2019. 55-year-old Hodge had been traveling down US Route 1 when he was rear-ended by another driver. The deputy that arrived at the scene immediately noticed the smell of alcohol, but Hodge quickly flashed his deactivated badge in an attempt to avoid being searched. The deputy searched the former officer nevertheless and found illicit substances hidden under his clothes. He was arrested for drunk driving and drug possession. A witness interviewed by police reported seeing Hodge come to a stop in the middle of the street as he attempted to make a U-turn moments before the crash. Eric Ashley Jr., the individual who accidentally plowed into Hodge's car, attempted to swerve out of the way but was unable to when the retired officer suddenly shifted lanes. In certain states, police officers must observe a person for 20 minutes before administering a breathalyzer test. During this waiting period, however, Hodge placed his fingers into his mouth and eventually, arresting officers considered his attitude and behavior a refusal to be tested. Number 7. Theodore Young. Theodore Young, a former police sergeant from Pleasanton, California, was charged with DUI and murder following a fatal accident on January the 22nd of 2022. Young, who was 63 at the time of his arrest, had already pleaded guilty to a separate DUI 5 years prior to the latest incident. He was accused of drunkenly driving his truck across the road into oncoming traffic, causing a head-on collision with 27-year-old Rebecca Gall's car. Although the accident took place on January the 18th, Gall died from her injuries 3 days later, leading to Young being charged with gross vehicular manslaughter while intoxicated and murder, along with DUI with blood alcohol above 0.08% and DUI causing serious injuries. Number 6. William Beatty. On November the 28th of 2022, William Beatty, a retired police officer, murdered his ex-girlfriend, Erin Gattier, at her New Jersey home before fatally turning the gun on himself. The former couple, both of whom were 47 years old at the time of their deaths, were survived by a pair of shared children. Beatty had retired from the force a decade prior due to a disability caused by an unspecified accident. Moments after the shots were fired, police arrived at the scene to conduct a welfare check, discovering both bodies. An autopsy and forensic investigation at the crime scene allowed detectives to determine that Beatty had broken into his ex-girlfriend's home moments before the attack. Family and friends of the victim revealed that Beatty had been highly controlling and wouldn't allow Gattier to speak to people he perceived as threats to their relationship. Number 5. Jerome Felipe. Jerome Felipe, a retired police officer from New York, was arrested in Washington, D.C. on June 3rd of 2022 after walking outside the Capitol building carrying a BB gun, ammo, and a fake badge. The 53-year-old man, who was also wearing body armor, showed officers a badge indicating he worked for the Department of Interpol. Though at first he claimed to have been driving to his grandmother's funeral, he later changed his story, stating he was in the Capitol to receive a medal from the Presidential Service Center. Felipe gave arresting officers permission to search his car, in which they found a large amount of ammo. He was charged with unlawful possession of high-capacity magazines and unregistered ammo. Felipe later claimed he'd been attempting to take pictures in front of the building and had accidentally given officers the fake badge instead of his business cards due to exhaustion. He further blamed his arrest on the Capitol being on high alert following the riot in January of 2021. Number 4. Stephen Johnson. On November the 23rd of 2022, retired policeman Stephen Johnson and an accomplice named Glenn Fenwick were formally charged with the murder of Christopher Jarvis, a resident of Wangoom, Australia, who'd gone missing 16 years earlier. Police found Jarvis's torched vehicle on June the 13th of 2006 with no sign of his whereabouts. The cold case was reopened in 2022 after an anonymous source offered detectives new information, which led to the arrests of Johnson and Fenwick, aged 70 and 59 respectively. No further details regarding Jarvis's death or the new evidence uncovered had been released to the public as of the latest available updates. Number 3. Sirafop Wong Mackett. 42-year-old Sirafop Wong Mackett was arrested on November the 16th of 2022 for throwing 6 M67 grenades at a neighbor's home in Ubon, Ratchathani, Thailand. The attack, which took place on April the 23rd of that same year, injured 3 people and led to Wong Mackett being expelled from the force. He'd allegedly been drunk at the time of the incident, which inflicted damage to several motorcycles as well. The man went into hiding after learning that a warrant had been issued for his arrest. Wong Mackett was found at a nearby resort where he did not resist arrest and, according to officers at the scene, admitted to the crime upon being booked. As of the latest developments, the case's legal proceedings were still ongoing. Number 2. Nicholas Tartaglione. 49-year-old Nicholas Tartaglione, a retired New York police officer, was charged with the murders of 4 individuals 7 months after their disappearances on April the 11th of 2016. A day following his arrest on December the 20th, investigators found the bodies of Martin Luna, Miguel Luna, Urbano Santiago, and Hector Gutierrez buried in the backyard of a home Tartaglione had been renting at the time. According to prosecutors, the motive for the crime was linked to illicit substances and money Martin Luna allegedly owed him. The 3 other victims, Luna's nephew, his niece's fiancé, and a close friend, had reportedly been collateral damage. According to the prosecution's working theory, which changed since the initial arrest, the suspect used a zip tie to fatally strangle Luna while the others were shot in the head, potentially by Tartaglione's associates. He pleaded not guilty to each of his charges and was ordered to remain behind bars until his trial. Before Jeffrey Epstein's first attempt on his life in 2019, Tartaglione shared a cell with the infamous financier. Although prosecutors initially sought the death sentence, they ultimately decided against the capital case. Tartaglione's trial date was scheduled for March the 13th of 2023. Number 1. Danny Lee Reedy. In 2019, retired LAPD officer Danny Lee Reedy was accused of carrying out a campaign of abuse, blackmail, and assault against fellow detective Isabel Villegas between 2013 and 2018. Villegas claimed that her superiors had ignored her reports on multiple occasions, leading to her filing a lawsuit against the force. She revealed that Reedy, with whom she'd shared an intimate relationship, had threatened to publicize explicit pictures of her unless she had intercourse with him and returned each of the gifts he'd given her while they were dating. Eventually, reportedly, show the compromising photographs to fellow officers. Although Reedy retired after 30 years of service, he'd been employed by the department at the time the abuses took place. Nevertheless, no disciplinary actions were taken against him during his time on the force. Following his arrest, he was charged with extortion, injuring a girlfriend or spouse, domestic violence, and possession of a firearm with a temporary restraining order. On November the 17th of 2021, Reedy pleaded no contest to injury of a girlfriend as part of a plea deal and was sentenced to 3 years probation, managing to avoid jail time. He was forbidden from owning guns or contacting the victim during his probation period and was also ordered to undergo counseling for at least a year. Thanks for watching. Would you take 10 years off from work now if it meant you had to retire 10 years later than planned? Let us know in the comments section below.